The town called the Chinese herbalist a fraud. She called him the only doctor worth trusting. His name was Leang Wei, and he had come to Glenfield, Idaho Territory, because Glenfield was a mining town that needed a doctor, and needing a doctor was the opening, the gap in the town's defenses that allowed a Chinese herbalist to settle. And settling was the temporary condition that Liang had learned to accept, the accepting the wisdom of a man who has moved 7 times in 12 years, and who understands that temporary is the permanent condition of a Chinese man in the American West, and the permanent temporary was the paradox, and the paradox was his life. He was 39 years old. He had been trained in herbal medicine by his father in Guangdong province, and he had been trained in Western medicine by a missionary doctor in San Francisco, and the two trainings were the combination the advantage. The advantage being that Liang could set bones, and he could brew teas, and he could read a pulse with his fingers, the way a Western doctor reads a thermometer. And the reading was the skill, and the skill was real, and the real was the thing the town refused to see, because seeing required looking past the face, and the face was Chinese, and Chinese was the category that Glenfield had placed Liang in, and the category was beneath. He had come to America at 17. He had come because coming was the seeking the opportunity that Guangdong could not provide and that America promised, and the promise was the gold being the metaphor and also the literal, because Liang's father had heard of gold in California and had sent his son to find it. And the finding had not been gold, but something harder and more valuable, which was the medical training that the missionary doctor in San Francisco had provided, providing the charity that changed Liang's life from a miner's life to a healer's life. And the changing was the transformation, and the transformation was the identity. He had practiced in San Francisco, and in Sacramento, and in Virginia City, and in Boise, and in 5 other towns whose names he carried like stones in a pocket, each stone a place where he had healed people, and where the healing had not been enough to purchase acceptance. And the not enough was the lesson. And the lesson was that skill does not overcome prejudice, that competence does not defeat category, and that category is the prison that the West builds for Chinese men, regardless of what those men can do. He had a shop on Alder Street. The shop was small, a single room with shelves of dried herbs and roots, and a table where he examined patients. And the patients were few, the few being the miners who came after dark, because coming after dark was the secrecy, the shame of a white man seeking treatment from a Chinese doctor. And the shame was the prejudice, and the prejudice was the wall, and the wall was what Liang worked behind, quietly, effectively, healing the miners who came in darkness and who denied the coming in daylight. Her name was Vera Dunlap. She was 35 years old. She was the widow of a miner who had died in a shaft collapse 2 years ago, and the dying had left Vera alone in Glenfield, with a boarding house and a reputation for directness that the town found uncomfortable, the uncomfortable being the quality that direct women produce in people who prefer indirectness. And indirectness was the currency of Glenfield's social life, and Vera did not deal in that currency. Vera ran the boarding house the way she ran everything, with the competence that does not ask permission and the efficiency that does not waste motion. She had taken over the boarding house after Frank's death, because the boarding house was the income, and the income was the survival, and the survival was non-negotiable. The non-negotiable, the resolve of a woman who has a daughter to raise, and who will raise that daughter without apology, and without dependence on the charity that widows are expected to accept gratefully. And the gratefully was the thing Vera refused, because gratefully is the posture of submission, and submission was not Vera's posture. She was known in Glenfield. She was known as the woman who spoke her mind at town meetings, who refused credit to miners who could not pay, who hired a Chinese laundress when no white woman would take the job, and who paid the Chinese laundress the same wage she would have paid a white woman. And the same wage was the fairness, and the fairness was the principle. And the principle was what made Vera Dunlap uncomfortable to the people of Glenfield, who preferred principles that did not require them to examine their own. Vera's daughter was sick. Her daughter Alma was 12 years old, and Alma had a cough that would not stop. the not stopping the persistence that separates a common cough from a serious cough. And the serious was the worry, and the worry was the reason Vera took Alma to Dr. Phelps, who was the town's doctor. The town's doctor being a man with a medical degree from a school in Pennsylvania and a fondness for whiskey that did not improve his diagnostic abilities. Dr. Phelps examined Alma. He prescribed a tonic that contained laudanum and told Vera that the cough would pass. And the would pass was the dismissal. The dismissal, the failure of a doctor who does not listen carefully enough, because listening carefully requires sobriety, and sobriety was not Dr. Phelps's consistent condition. The cough did not pass. The cough worsened. The worsening was the alarm the mother's knowledge that something is wrong, the knowledge that does not require a medical degree, because mother knowledge is its own medicine, and the medicine said, this is not passing, this is progressing, and the progressing is the danger. Vera heard about Leang from a miner at her boarding house, a man named Cobb who said, quietly, that the Chinese herbalist on Alder Street had cured his lung trouble when Phelps could not. And the quietly was the secrecy, and the secrecy was the recommendation, and the recommendation was the thing that sent Vera to Alder Street. She went in daylight. She went in daylight because Vera Dunlap did not do things in darkness. The not doing in darkness, the directness, the character that the town found uncomfortable and that Vera considered essential, the essential being the honesty, and the honesty was the walking down Alder Street in broad daylight to the Chinese herbalist that produced the staring, and the staring was the judgment, and the judgment was the price, and the price was one Vera was willing to pay. Leang examined Alma. He examined her with the particular attention that his training had produced, the attention that listens to breathing, and reads the pulse and looks at the tongue and asks questions. The questions, the diagnostic tool that Dr. Phelps had not employed because Phelps had not asked. And the not asking was the failure, and the failure was the difference between the two doctors. Your daughter has a condition in the lungs that is not the common cough, Leang said. He said it carefully. The precision of a man who speaks English as a second language, and who compensates for the secondness with exactness, and the exactness was the clarity. The tonic Dr. Phelps prescribed contains laudanum, which suppresses the cough but does not treat the cause. The cause requires a different approach. What approach? I will brew a tea from specific herbs, astragalus, licorice root, fritillary bulb. The tea will address the condition in the lungs. The tea will not suppress the cough. The tea will resolve the cause of the cough. And the resolving is the healing. And the healing will take 2 weeks. Vera looked at Leang. She looked at him with the assessment that a mother gives to a person who holds her daughter's health. The assessment, the most serious assessment a human being can perform. And the performing was the looking. And the looking saw a man who was precise and attentive, and who had asked questions that the other doctor had not asked. And the asking was the evidence. And the evidence was sufficient. Make the tea. Leang made the tea. He made it with the particular care that his father had taught him. The care, the craft, the knowledge, that healing is not the application of a single remedy, but the combination of remedies tailored to the patient. And the tailoring was the art, and the art was what Leang practiced in his small shop on Alder Street. Alma drank the tea. Alma drank it for 2 weeks. The 2 weeks the treatment, and the treatment worked. The cough resolved. The resolving was the healing, and the healing was the evidence. And the evidence was Alma breathing clearly for the first time in months. And the breathing was the proof. Vera brought Alma to see Leang again. She brought her for a follow-up. The follow-up, the care after the care that good medicine requires. And Leang examined Alma again and pronounced the condition resolved. And the resolved was the relief. And the relief was the tears, that Vera did not cry, because Vera did not cry in public. But the not crying was the effort, and the effort was visible in the particular brightness of her eyes. And Leang saw the brightness, and the seeing was the understanding, and the understanding was the connection. She began visiting. She visited not because Alma was sick, but because visiting was the wanting, and the wanting was the discovery that Leang Wei was the most interesting person in Glenfield. Interesting because Leang had stories from two worlds, the two worlds being China and America, and the two worlds was the perspective. The perspective, the wisdom that a person acquires when they have lived in more than one place, and more than one culture, and more than one language. And the wisdom was the conversation, and the conversation was the thing Vera had been missing. The loneliness that a direct woman experiences in a town that does not appreciate directness. Leang taught her about the herbs. He taught her the names in English and in Cantonese. And the teaching was the sharing. And the sharing was the intimacy that develops between two people who are genuinely interested in each other. The genuinely the quality the rarity, the thing that makes the connection precious. Vera told people. She told them because telling was the honesty, and the honesty was the directness that was Vera's nature. She told the women at the general store, and she told the men at the boarding house, and she told anyone who would listen, that the Chinese herbalist on Alder Street had healed her daughter when the town doctor could not. And the telling was the advocacy, and the advocacy was the defense, and the defense was the thing that Leang had never had. A voice in the town that spoke for him, a voice that was not Chinese, and that therefore carried the weight that the town's prejudice required. And the requiring was the injustice, and the injustice was the thing Vera was fighting. The town did not appreciate the telling. The town pushed back. The pushing back was the response of a community whose prejudice had been challenged, and the challenging was the discomfort, and the discomfort produced the hostility. The hostility directed not at Vera, who was white and widowed, and therefore afforded a certain protection, but at Leang, who was Chinese, and therefore afforded none. Someone broke Liang's window. Someone wrote a word on Liang's door. Someone left a dead animal on Liang's step. The someones were anonymous. The anonymous the cowardice that prejudice produces, because prejudice is the belief that requires darkness, and darkness is the anonymity, and the anonymity was the acts. Leang cleaned the window. He cleaned the word from his door. He disposed of the animal. He cleaned with the patience of a man who has cleaned before, in other towns, in other years, the cleaning the ritual that follows the hatred, the ritual that says, I will not be moved by this, I will not be driven by this, I will clean, and I will continue, and continuing is the resistance, and the resistance is quiet. Vera was not quiet. Vera's resistance was not the quiet kind. Vera's resistance was the loud kind, the loud being the directness applied to injustice, and the application was fierce. She walked down Alder Street, and she asked questions. She asked the questions that direct women ask, which are the questions that make cowards uncomfortable. Who did this? Who saw this? Who knows, and is saying nothing? And the saying nothing was the complicity, and the complicity was the town's shame, and the shame was what Vera named, because naming is the first step of confronting, and confronting is what Vera did. Vera went to the town council. She went because going was the doing, and doing was Vera's response to injustice. The response the action the standing up that direct women perform when the standing up is required. Leang Wei healed my daughter. Leang Wei has healed minors in this town who will not admit it, because admitting requires courage, and courage is the thing this town lacks. You are allowing a man to be terrorized because his face is not the face you want on your doctor, and the not wanting is the prejudice, and the prejudice is the disgrace, and the disgrace is yours. The council did nothing. The council did nothing because councils do nothing when doing something requires confronting the prejudice of the people who elected them, and the confronting is the risk, and the risk is the losing of votes, and votes are the currency that councils value above justice. Vera did something. Vera did the thing that direct women do when councils fail. She acted. She moved Liang's practice into her boarding house. She moved it because the boarding house was hers. The ownership, the authority. And the authority said, this man will practice medicine under my roof, and my roof is the protection, and the protection is the thing the council will not provide, and that I will provide in its place. Leang resisted. You will lose borders. You will lose the income. The losing is the cost, and the cost should not be yours. The cost is mine because I choose it. I choose it because my daughter is breathing because of you. And breathing is the thing I value more than borders. And the valuing is the decision. And the decision is made. Leang looked at Vera. He looked at her with the looking that is the gratitude and the admiration and the beginning of the thing that gratitude and admiration produce when they are combined. The combined being the feeling, and the feeling was the thing that a man who has moved 7 times in 12 years has learned not to trust. Because trusting feelings in a world that does not want you is the vulnerability, and vulnerability is the thing that gets you hurt. But Vera was not the world. Vera was Vera. Vera was the woman who walked down Alder Street in daylight, and who stood before the town council, and who moved his practice into her boarding house. And the moving was the shelter, and the shelter was the love. And the love was the thing that Leang had not expected, and that had arrived anyway. The arriving, the surprise, the gift that direct women give to men who have learned to expect nothing. And nothing was what Leang had expected, and Vera was the everything that replaced it. I will stay, Leang said. I will stay in your boarding house, and I will practice medicine, and I will heal the people who come to me, and the coming will increase, because your voice is the voice that changes minds, and changed minds are the future, and the future is the thing I have not allowed myself to imagine. Imagine it, Vera said. Imagine it, because the imagining is the beginning, and the beginning is here, and here is my boarding house, and my boarding house is the place where a doctor practices, and where a mother's daughter breathes, and where the future is being built, one patient at a time. Leang smiled. The smile was the rare thing that a man produces when the rare thing happens, and the rare thing was belonging, and belonging was the thing that Vera had given him, and the giving was the love, and the love was the medicine that no herb can brew, and that no training can teach, and that only a direct woman in a mining town in Idaho Territory can provide, and the providing was Vera, and Vera was the home.